Start with the prayers. Om Sadashiva Samaranbham Shankaracharya Asmadacharyaparyantam Vande Guru Paramparam Saraswati
Namastubhyam Varade Gauri Namastubhyam Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhi Me Sada Shiva Samarambha
Navavatu
Manau Gunatu Mahaviriyankaravavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavidvishai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti
Vasudevendra
Vasudevendra
Jnanapradam
Jnanapradam
Om Namah Shivaya. Alright. So last class we had started talking about Shariratrayam and we had discussed Sthula Shariram. Sthula Shariram is the physical body and we had discussed it in 4 aspects. That is the condition, cause, function and nature. Now in the same way, today we will see Sukshma Shariram, the second body. Okay, so we can read this. I will unmute you and then you can repeat after me. Sukshma Shariram Kim
Sukshma Shariram
Apanchīkrita Panchamaha Bhutaik Kritam
Apanchīkrita Panchamahabhutam
Satkarmajanyam Sukha Dukkhadi Bhoga Sadhanam Pancha Jnanendriyani Pancha Karmendriyani Pancha Pranadayaha Manaschaikam Buddhishchaika Evam Saptadasha Kalabhihi Saha Yattishtati Tat Sukshma Shariram. Okay, so today we're going to start the topic of Sukshma Shariram. The translation of Sukshma Shariram is subtle body. Okay, some people also call it astral body, but we call it subtle body. Now, to make it little easier to understand, one part of Sukshma Shariram is the mind. It has some other parts also, but just to help you relate what is Sukshma Shariram, one part is the mind. So other than physical body, there is another part to us as human beings, right? It is not just the physical body that is there. We also have something internal that is happening, right? Now, interestingly, in modern science, the field of psychology was accepted only in around the 1800s. Before that, there was actually some debate about whether mind is a separate thing from the body or not, whether mind is actually just a part of the body. So till then, they were treating as though mind was just a part of the body and not a separate thing. But here, we are seeing that mind, not only is it a separate part, but it is also just a subsection of a larger part. And that larger part is the Sukshma Shariram. So the first body we saw was the Sthula Shariram, the physical body, which we are all very familiar with, right? Because we all have physical bodies and other people also have physical bodies. And there's been a lot of in-depth research and analysis that has happened into this physical body. So we are quite aware of it. We are very well versed with this body. And also it is available to the sense organs. So because we can see it, touch it, feel it, we are very aware what is Sthula Shariram. But when it comes to Sukshma Shariram, it is subtle. Hence the name subtle, Sukshma. Sukshma means subtle. Subtle means not available to the sense organs. We cannot really see it, we cannot really touch it or in any way perceive it with our sense organs. And that is why this one is a little more challenging to understand. Physical body is very easy to understand because we're all familiar. The subtle body is not so easily available to sense organs, and that is why it is a little more challenging to understand. But still we are familiar with it because we all have subtle bodies. So it is slightly more challenging than Sthula, but definitely far easier than the next one, which is Karana Shariram. Okay. So now we will see the Sukshma Shariram once again in the same 4 points. The first point is condition. What is the condition of Sukshma Shariram? It is Sukshma. Sukshma, which is subtle or invisible, intangible, not really perceptible to the sense organs. So the word for that is Indriya Agocharam. Okay, Indriya Agocharam. But just because we cannot see it, we cannot say it is not there. Right? We cannot see it, but it is still there. In fact, there's a small joke about this. So there's a person who says, oh, I have a very bad headache. It hurts a lot. So the other person says, I cannot see your headache, so it must not be there. So this person, the first person, he hits the second person. And the second person says, oh, why did you hit me? That hurt. And so the first person says, I cannot see your pain, so it must not be there. So what it means is that just because you cannot see something doesn't mean it is not there. So non-perception is not proof of non-existence. Non-perception is not proof of non-existence. If you cannot see it, doesn't mean that it is absent. It may be there. Okay? So just perception alone is not proof for the existence of a thing. So coming back, this Sukshma Shariram, we cannot see it, but it is still partially knowable to us, right? We are all aware of our own minds. We are aware of our own thoughts, our own emotions. We are aware of the different sensations inside the body, right? So it is partially knowable. Whose Sukshma Shariram is partially knowable to me? My own Sukshma Shariram is partially knowable to me alone. Can I see other people's Sukshma Shariram? No. Right? But because I can feel my own Sukshma Shariram, I know that it is there, I am aware, I assume that everyone else also has a Sukshma Shariram and that they are also able to feel or be aware of their own Sukshma Shariram. So in that way, it is partially knowable. But my own Sukshma Shariram or other people's Sukshma Shariram are not available for sense organ perception. They are Indriya Agocharam. Okay, so this is the condition of Sukshma Shariram. It is subtle, but partially knowable. The second aspect was the cause. If you remember, there were 2 causes, Samanya Karanam and Vishesha Karanam. For Sthula Shariram, what was Samanya Karanam? We said it is the Pancha Mahabhutani. And what kind of Pancha Mahabhutani? The Sthula Pancha Mahabhutani. The gross 5 elements are the general cause for physical body. And what was the specific cause? We said it is karma, Purva Janma karma. Now for Sukshma Shariram, what is the Samanya Karanam? It is the Sukshma Pancha Mahabhutani. It is the 5 elements, but in subtle form. Why? Because this Sukshma Shariram is itself subtle. If it is made out of gross 5 elements, then shouldn't it be visible? So that is why the Sukshma Shariram is made of Sukshma Pancha Mahabhutani. So those same 5 elements that we discussed last time, space, air, fire, water, earth, these 5 elements, but in their subtle form. So they have 2 forms, a gross form and a subtle form. So that subtle form, okay, so there's no equivalent English word to try and understand these things. So you can call it energy for lack of a better word, a type of energy you can say of the 5 elements. So those 5 elements in the subtle form are the Samanya Karanam for Sukshma Shariram. Okay. And what about Vishesha Karanam? What is Vishesha Karanam? The specific design or the unique blueprint for each person. So we all know everybody has different kind of mind, right? Different kind of personality, different kind of reactions. In fact, even different kind of health, different kind of metabolism. So inside also for everybody, it is very different, right? So where did this design of the unique, functioning come from? From the karma again. So it is the Purva Janma karma, the karma from the previous lives that lends the design to the functioning of the present life. Okay. So the general cause, Samanya Karanam, is the Sukshma Panchabhutani, and the specific cause, Vishesha Karanam, is the Sat Karma Janma, Karma, the previous life's karmas. Okay. So now we can go to the next one. So I'm going a little faster because now you know the structure of those 4 points that we're discussing. Function. What is the function of Sukshma Sharira? It is the instrument for experiences. So when you look at life, life is nothing but a series of experiences that we have. Some are pleasant experiences and some are unpleasant experiences. But the whole of life is nothing but a whole series of experiences all put together. And that is what we call life. Now, this experience is only possible when you have the instrument for experience. For example, you look at, say, a dead body. Does that dead body have experience? Can it see, hear, talk? Can it interact with the world? No. No experience is possible for the dead body. Why? Because it doesn't have the instrument. And what is the instrument? The Sukshma Shariram is the instrument. This Sukshma Shariram is what allows you to interact with the world and have that experience. Okay, so that is why Sukshma Shariram is the instrument for experience. And interestingly, it is not just one instrument, it is actually a bundle of instruments. Specifically, according to this text, there are 17 instruments and they are all put together, and that composite is called Sukshma Shariram, and that is what is the combined instrument for experience. Okay, so to give you another example to help understand this, we always take the example of the phone, the cell phone, right? So your phone has 2 parts to it, the physical part and the software part. In fact, any gadget, right? It has the physical part and it has a software part. The physical part is what you can see, what you hold in your hand. That is the hardware, the physical part. In fact, if you break open your phone also, inside there'll be some other components, the circuit board and all those battery and things like that. There will be many things inside. But there is a part of the phone that you cannot see. And what is that? The software part. So those who are good with, or those who have studied a little bit of programming or something, they will probably understand this example or relate to this example better. So inside the phone, an invisible part exists, right? The programming, the coding, what we call the operating system, and then there are different applications. Now, if you break open the phone, can you find the operating system? Can you hold a piece and say, this is the operating system or this is the application? No, because it is invisible. It is, part of the software. So this software is what brings the phone to life. If your phone didn't have software, it is just as good as a brick, right? It is just a rectangle piece that you hold and it doesn't do anything. But what brings the phone to life? The software brings the phone to life. Because the software is there, the phone is able to interact with the outside world. What is the phone interaction with the outside world? When it displays something on the screen, or if you click something, it is able to take that input and do something with that. So it is able to interact only because there is software. Okay, and this is an important relationship to understand, that both hardware and software are necessary for the phone to be alive. The software cannot exist independently. If I tell you remove the hardware and give me only the software, is it possible? No. The software cannot exist independently without the hardware. It needs the hardware with which to function. And same with the hardware, if there is no software, it is just as good as a stone. It cannot come to life. So the function of Sukshma Shariram is to give life to the body. So now the physical body acts as a residence for the Sukshma Shariram to be, to live there. And the Sukshma Shariram is the one which is the instrument of interacting with the world. Okay, and both are necessary for you to call somebody as living. What happens when the Sukshma Shariram leaves? We call that as death. So arrival of Sukshma Shariram is what we call birth, and departure of Sukshma Shariram is what we call death. Okay, and in between, as long as this Sukshma Sharira, Sthula Sharira association is there, we call that life. And this, in fact, is the difference between a living body and a dead body. Or in fact, a living object and a dead object. So there are a lot of creatures on the planet that we classify as living beings, right? We say plants are living beings. We say animals are living beings. If you open the school textbooks, they will give some definition. They will say living beings have these characteristics. And what are those characteristics? They will say they're able to process their food, or they're able to breathe in some way, some respiration is happening. Or they will say response to stimuli. If you do something, they're able to respond to it. The response may be a very evolved kind of response, or it can be a very primitive response, but a response is there, right? They will give these characteristics. But now there is a new definition for what is living and what is non-living, and that is the presence or absence of Sukshma Shariram. A stone does not have Sukshma Shariram, and that is why a stone is an inanimate or non-sentient or non-living object. Whereas a tree is a living object. Okay. So this is the function of Sukshma Shariram. It lends life for the living being. and it is the instrument with which we experience. So this is function of Sukshma Shariram. And we'll see the fourth point now. What is the nature of Sukshma Shariram? It is of a changing nature. If you remember, the Sthula Shariram is also of a changing nature. And how many types of changes we saw there? We said there are 6 types of changes. And what is the name of those 6 types of changes? And also, what are those 6 changes? Who can answer?
I can answer.
Prithvi?
वर्धते परिमाणते अपक्षीयते विनश्यति.
Okay, fine. All right. So, Shadvikara, the name of the changes is called Shadvikara. And what are they? They are Asti, Jayate, Vardhate, Viparinamate, Apakshiyate, and Vinashyati. All right. All of this was covered in the previous class, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. So, these are the 6 types of changes associated with the physical body. Now, what about subtle body? The subtle body is also of a changing nature. How do we know this? Because look at your own mind. From moment to moment, the mind is not the same, right? Every moment, the mind is continuously changing. And not just mind, the whole Sukshma Shariram, the part that we are aware of also, is continuously changing, violently changing all the time. So this Sukshma Shariram is also of a changing nature. But there is one difference. And that difference is that this Sukshma Shariram has a much longer life than Sthula Shariram. Okay, when the physical body drops, the Sukshma Shariram is still there. The Sukshma Shariram does not die with the death of the physical body. The Sukshma Shariram travels, picks up a new body, and it continues. It takes the shape of the new body. The new body may not necessarily be a human body. It can be something else. It can be a dog body or an elephant body or some other body. And it takes the shape of that body and it continues. So when does Sukshma Shariram die? It only dies upon moksha. Okay, and when I say die, remember it is an as if death, not an absolute death. It is an as if death. So the destruction of Sukshma Shariram is possible only at Videha Mukti, at moksha. Okay, so with this, we have completed the 4 parts of Sukshma Shariram. Now for Sukshma Shariram, there is a 5th point also, which is the components or the constituents of Sukshma Shariram. And we will be seeing this in some detail in some time. Okay, so if we didn't see this point for the Sthula Shariram, right? But if somebody asks what is the constituents of the physical body, then you can tell hands, legs, a head, this kind of thing. In fact, if we are to look at Sthula Shariram, there's a 5.5-year medical degree course available, which does a very thorough analysis of the physical body, right? But we are not going into that much detail on the physical body. But just for our general awareness, we already know. And so that is why probably the author did not think it important enough to talk about. But when it comes to Sukshma Shariram, we don't know. And so that is why this part is covered. So constituents of Sukshma Shariram, there are 17 different constituents. Okay, and what are they? We will see later. So before I open for questions, I will finish this also, which is the verse. So now that we are on the topic of Sukshma Shariram, the student is asking question, Sukshma Shariram Kim? What is Sukshma Shariram? The second body of Shariratrayam, what is it? And the teacher answers, and he says, Apanchikrita Pancha Mahabhutaik Kritam. So it is a very similar line to the Sthula Shariram, right? So we have discussed Kritam means composed of, made of. What is it made of? Pancha Mahabhuta, the 5 elements. But what type of Pancha Mahabhuta? The Apanchikrita Pancha Mahabhuta. Okay, we can take the meaning of Apanchikrita to mean subtle or ungrossified. The not grossified 5 elements, subtle 5 elements. That is the composition for Sukshma Shariram. And he says Sat Karma Janyam, born out of the previous karmas. So once again, what I explained, the unique design of each Sukshma Shariram depends on the previous life's karmas. Okay. And this is the function. He says, Sukha Dukkhadi Bhoga Sadhanam. Bhoga means experience. Sadhanam means instrument. Okay, here the word sadhanam means instrument. And so it is the instrument for bhoga, instrument for experiences. And what kind of experiences? The experience can be sukha, pleasurable, dukkha, painful, adi. Adi means in between or other types. So it can be pleasurable or painful and others also. And then from here to here, he's talking about the constituents of Sukshma Shariram. So the constituents we will see in 4 categories. Pancha Jnanendriyani, that is the 5 sense organs. Pancha Karmendriyani, the 5 organs of action. Pancha Pranadayaha, the 5 types of prana. And this Manaha and Buddhi is given here. We will see this under the category of Antakaranaha. Antakaranaha. Okay, and if you count, so there are 5 here. 5, 1 and 1. And if you add up all this, what do you get? 17. 5 plus 5 plus 5, 15, plus 2, 17. And so he says, Saptadasha. Saptadasha means 17. Okay, Saptadasha Kalabihi. Kalabihi means components or constituents. Okay, so this Sukshma Shariram is with Saptadasha Kalabihi. Saha means with. So with or composed of these 17 components, that entity is called as Sukshma Shariram. Okay, now we can stop for questions.
मेघा जी,
Yeah.
भैया 5 ज्ञानेंद्रियां, 5 कर्मेंद्रियां, how many pranendriya?
It's not pranendriya, it's 5 prana. 5.
And then antakarana.
Yeah, antakarana is the 4th
Is how many?
type. That here the author has given only 2, Manaha and Buddhi. 2 he has given, but actually there are 4. We don't know why the author has given only 2, but in other texts we find 4. So in the class we will study 4, but for some reason the author has given only 2.
Okay, thank you.
So really speaking, it is actually 19 components, not 17.
Medha ji,
Yeah.
this reflected consciousness is this function of Sukshma Sharir.
The reflected consciousness, yes, we call that the Jiva. The Sukshma Shariram is basically what we call as Jiva. And everything reflects consciousness, finally, you know. You cannot really say that the physical, the stone is absent of consciousness. It is just that the Sukshma Shariram is a much better reflecting surface. That is all.
Megha ji, Amit this side, like we were talking that
the unique purpose of Sukshma Sharir is previous life karmas. So what about the karmas which we are doing? So can we change our Sukshma karma in our present life, or how is it? The present karmas.
So you tell me, have you ever, through some effort, managed to change some behavior of yours or change some habit, change even your mindset?
Yeah.
So doesn't that answer your question? It is possible to change
Okay.
through our
So
present actions.
that is known as free will.
Yes, that is known as free will. That is known as agami karma, the present actions that we do. And always remember that if agami karma was not possible, all of this study and Veda, Shastra, everything is pointless. Because if everything is fixed, why should we put so much hard work? What is the point, right? If everything is fixed. Because change is possible, all of this is meaningful.
Umedaji,
Yes.
so all these divisions of the koshas and the three bodies, this knowledge comes from like the Samkhya philosophy, or is coming directly from the Upanishads or from the Karmakanda part of the Vedas? Which part of the Vedas or which part of philosophy is this knowledge coming from?
It comes from the Vedas. Sankhya is merely an interpretation of the Vedas.
Okay.
Just as how Advaita Vedanta is also an interpretation of the Vedas. So in the Vedas, the statement will be given that, okay, there is something called Swarga. Now, what exactly is Swarga is open to interpretation, right? So different philosophies, that is the Shad Darshanas, they came up with a different way of interpreting. You cannot ever say that the statement Swarga is there is wrong. Because Veda has said Swarga is there, something called Swarga is definitely there. But what exactly is Swarga? Okay, so that is slightly differently interpreted in the Shad Darshanas, in all the 6 types of Darshanas. But the interpretation must never contradict with any other statement of Vedas. And as you know, the Vedas are very vast. So whatever you interpret can never be in contradiction with other statements. In fact, it must supplement and support the whole system.
So which part of the Vedas does this knowledge comes from? Like, is in the Karmakanda, in the Upanishads, in the
In both, it
Ahankarya,
comes in both.
is spread in all the texts?
It is spread everywhere. They
Okay.
kind of repeatedly talk about these things. It is scattered throughout, and it is available both in Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda.
Okay. Thank you.
Meghaji, one more question. Why we are counting this Panch Karmendriya in subtle body? Because we can see our Karmendriyas.
That's a very good question. We will see the answer to that. In fact, I was going to expect this question from one of you, and it's good you asked. We will see the answer shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Medhaji,
Yeah.
can we replace the Jiva word with prana? Is both the things are same?
No, prana is a sub part of Jiva, sub component.
Okay.
They are not interchangeable.
And one more, ma'am, question this leads to me. See, there are few people who by birth don't have, let's say, hearing power or seeing power. So is it like that their Sukshma Sharir is lacking that ability? Just wondering.
Yeah, that also we are going to see when we look at the Jnanendriyas a little bit in detail.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Vandana ji.
Medhaji, what are these Sukshma Sharir Panch Mahabhutani, the 5 elements in the pure form? What are these? Can you explain that?
They are the 5 elements in a subtle form. There is another name for this. We call it Tanmatra. Tanmatra is another name for this Apachikrita Panchamahabhutani. So it is the 5 elements. So we generally know of 5 elements, right? There is space and air, water, fire, all these things. And what we see is the gross form. The gross form, right? Because you're able to see it, it is gross. So those 5 have a subtle form. And the gross form is evolved out of the subtle form. So the first thing that comes into creation, the first thing that comes into existence is the subtle form of these 5 elements. And those evolve and become the gross form. And that gross form is what we can see. But before the evolution, what is there is the subtle form.
Is there any name for the subtle form, like for space or air?
No, it is the same names, but we usually say it is Sukshma or Apachikrita. The names are the same.
Neetaji, this when we say the structure of an electron or atom and all that, that structure will become will be a subtle form of it. It will be a gross form, or I mean very microscopic. Which the sages never needed any instruments. They could just do deep meditation and know about the smell of something or the flavor or the taste and all. Or they could predict about the stars and where how far it is. So I mean, they're using their gross mind to know the subtle form, or how are they doing?
Mind is not gross, first of all. Mind is also subtle. Okay. And what you're talking about, electrons and all of those things, there are 2 different prakriyas of looking at creation and looking at the universe. Prakriya means a methodology, a method of analysis or method of inquiry. Okay, so when you are using 2 different prakriyas, they're not always comparable. Okay, so for example, suppose I have an apple, suppose I have a rose, suppose I have a carrot, and suppose I have an orange. And suppose I say, okay, categorize these as fruits, vegetable, and flower. What will you do? You will put the apple and orange together, carrot in one category, and the rose flower in another category. So that is one prakriya of analyzing these. Suppose I tell you, analyze these by color. Then you will put the apple and the rose together and the carrot and the orange together. Now, are these 2 comparable? This color prakriya and the category prakriya?
They are different qualities of that particular thing, object. One is color, taste, form, size. I mean, every object will have these particular qualities. So depending on what you are looking, what you want to describe, you'll classify them accordingly.
Classify them in any way, right? Suppose I say classify them as edible and non-edible. Okay, then it's a different way of organizing these same things, right? So whenever it comes to anatma, anatma is the world that we see around us, right? So whenever it comes to anatma, you can use any number of prakriyas. Within the Upanishads itself, you will find dozens of prakriyas being used to analyze the same jagat, the same creation, the same process of creation. And even when you go into physics, suppose you take, the theory of creation. How did all this start? So the most famous one is Big Bang theory, right? But that is not the only theory. They have a lot of theories in physics about how the world came into existence. So there can be different prakriyas. Okay, but finally, for us, we never say that just because one Upanishad says this prakriya and another Upanishad says different prakriya, it doesn't mean they contradict each other. There can always be many, many ways of analyzing the same thing, as you saw with the apple carrot example. Different prakriyas, and you will have different combinations, different theories, different ways of looking at the same thing, right? But finally, what is the point? That all of this is anatma, mithya, therefore doesn't matter. What finally matters to us is Atma only. So all of this categorization that we are doing is finally to negate it. So we do any number of prakriyas only to negate it and only to say it doesn't matter. So physics, you can think of it as another prakriya, a more modern kind of prakriya, but finally doesn't matter because an electron is also very much anatma.
But what I'm trying to ask is, even if he has to study the very deep levels of anatma, he'll have to go deep inside him to, I mean, he'll have to delve into his consciousness to get that knowledge. Right? He's never seen an electron microscope, he's not used or whatever. Prakriti, whatever he wants to see, his procedure is the same. That is, he has to go within himself to do it, whether he's going to study Atma or Anatma. So the procedure is the same.
See, remember that consciousness is that which allows you to study anatma. Consciousness by itself can never be studied. The reason you are able to study anatma is because you are conscious. So the study of anatma doesn't matter. How we do it, what you are asking about the rishis using different means to study. Today we use microscopes and those kind of things. But they used maybe some other kind of technology, maybe a more subtle kind of technology within the mind. But it is still anatma. Therefore, doesn't matter.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that there weren't other methods. There might have been, and maybe we don't know about them. Of course, the mind is still a very unexplored part of us. They say the human mind has so much potential and we are not even using 1% of it, right? With just 1%, if we are able to come up with this much technology, imagine if you unlock more of the mind. So possible that there is more potential to the mind. But what is the final line for us as mumukshus and Vedantins? It is all anatma, therefore doesn't matter. Jagan Mithya. What is that line? Brahma Satya, Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. The first part is important. Brahma Satya, Jagan Mithya.
Mehtaji,
Okay. Yeah.
one last question.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any example of how two different Upanishads use a different prakriya in their teachings? Do you know something about any example to?
This theory of creation itself, what we study in Tattva Bodha, this is one theory. You know, if you remember the what comes in the theory of creation, they say first Akasha was born, subtle Akasha, and from that the next one, and so on, right? This is one method. But in one of the Upanishads, they say first Brahma was born, then from Brahma the next, which is I think the Prajapatis or something, they were born, and so on, so on. So it is a different way of looking.
Okay.
So then they say Brahma created the universe and all those things. So it is just a different way of representing or looking at creation. So the theory of creation, especially within the different Shad Darshana, within different Upanishads itself, you will find different presentations of the same theory of creation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But there are 19 components, but here 17 are listed over here for the Sukshma Sharir.
Yeah.
What are the additional two?
The other two are called Ahankara and Chitta, which we will see when we study them in detail.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we can move on. So these are the 17 components of Sukshma Shariram, which we will now be seeing in a little more detail. Okay, so these two, the last two, come under the category of Antakarana. Antakarana means inner instrument. In English, roughly we call it the mind. But in Sanskrit, within the mind also, we have 4 different categories or 4 different aspects of the mind. So the mind in English is actually an insufficient word, an inadequate word. Okay, so in Sanskrit, we call it Antakarana, the inner instrument, referring to what is called as mind in English. Now we can see each of these in a little more detail. So first we will look at the 5 sense organs. So what are the 5 sense organs? In English, you can tell me.
Medhaji,
I
Yes.
you said there are 4 constituents, but the author has given just 2 in this.
Yeah.
Which are the other 2?
Manaha, Buddhi, Ahankara, and Chitta.
Okay.
Ahankara and Chitta are missing in this text. We don't know why, but there it is mentioned in some other texts. So we have taken from there and we will cover it in this class.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what are the 5?
Shrotra,
I-
Tvak, Chakshu, Rasana, Ghrana. The ears, skin, eyes, tongue, and nose.
Eyes,
Hearing,
nose.
touch, sight, and taste.
Yes, Rituji, you have given the correct answer in Sanskrit, English, and in the correct order. So that is good.
Yes, because you taught it that way, and thrice I've listened to your classes.
Yes, so that is correct. If you know the order, you should always give it in the correct order. Okay, so there is a logic to the order also, which we will see in a later class. But this is the order. Shrotram, Tvak, Chakshuhu, Rasana, Granam. Okay, so we can read this. You can repeat after me. Shrotram, Tvak,
Shrotram
Chakshurasana,
Chakshurasana
Shuhasrasana.
Granamiti,
Anamiti.
Panchagnanendriyani.
Panchajnanendriyani
Okay, so these are the 5 Panchagnanendriyani, or the 5 sense organs. And these are the names: Shrotram, ears; Tvak, skin; Chakshuhu, eyes; Rasanam, tongue; Granam, nose. Okay, so these are the names and this is the order. It will be good if you can remember the order and also remember the Sanskrit names, because these things keep coming up again and again in all the texts that you will study. So it is good if you can remember the names. So these are the 5 sense organs. Now, what is a sense organ? A sense organ is the input organ. That organ which gives you information about the external world. For example, with your eyes, you can see the external world and it gives you information about color and form, right? The ears give you information about sound. The skin, or the organ of sense, gives you the sensory information. If something, the temperature as well as the touch, whether it is a soft texture or whether it is a rough texture, whether it is a hot thing or whether it is a cold thing. So these things are available with the skin and so on. So these you're already familiar with because all of us have sense organs. So we know what they are and what they do. So you can say these are the input gates, right? The entry gates. They collect information about the world outside. Now, there was a question asked by Amit Ji, which is a very good question and which needs to be addressed. These organs, we can see them, right? You can see the nose, you can see the ears, you can see the eyes. And just now we discussed that Sukshma Shariram is not something we can see. Sukshma Shariram cannot be seen, and yet all these organs, which are supposed to be a component of Sukshma Shariram, they can be seen. Isn't this a contradiction? So the answer is no, it is not a contradiction, because we are not talking about the physical part of the sense organs. Okay, we are not talking about the physical eyes that you can see on a person. We are not talking about the physical ears. We are talking about the Shakti, or the power behind those sense organs, which allows that sense organ to operate and do what it is supposed to do. It is a Shakti or the energy or the power. And that power is called Indriya. Okay, the word Indriya refers to the Sukshma part of the sense organ. If you want to talk about the Sthula part of a sense organ, that is called as Golakam. Okay, Golakam is the physical or anatomical part of a sense organ that you can see. So the physical eye that you can see, that is a Golakam. But the seeing power that is there for that eye, that is Indriya, Chakshu Indriya. Okay, so this is the distinction. Now, as Vedanta students, you always need to remember that there are two parts to any organ. That is the Golakam and the Indriyam. The Golakam is the physical part and the Indriyam is the operational part, the power of it. Now, there was another question asked by Amit ji, which is what happens if something is damaged? Some people are blind or deaf. So then how to understand this? So I don't know how many of you know of a lady called Helen Keller. She was there last century, I think. When she was around 2 years old, some disease happened to her. And by the time she recovered from that disease, she had lost her sense of sight and her sense of hearing. So she was blind and she was deaf. Okay, so now, do we say that she lost her Indriya or do we say she lost her Golakam? Okay, so let us assume that anatomically everything was there for her. Okay, we don't know internally inside the nerves and all that what was there, but let us just assume that everything was fine in the physical sense. So you can see her ears and you can see her eyes, but she cannot see. So which one is damaged, the Golakam or the Indriyam?
The Indriya.
The Indriya is damaged, right? Because nothing has happened to her physical ear or her physical eye, but still she cannot see or cannot hear. So the Indriyam is damaged. Now, sometimes for some people, sometimes an accident happens or something else happens, and the physical eye or the physical ear of some physical part, that is damaged. Now tell me, because of which that person is blind or deaf?
Golakam.
The Golakam is damaged, and that is why that person is blind. Okay, so in English, there is only one word, blind. But now we understand that there are two parts. That is the Golakam, the Indriyam. If either one of them is damaged, it results in blindness or any of the other organs. So what it means is that both parts are necessary for functioning. Just like your phone, just like the phone, right? If the phone falls down and it breaks piece. Now, the Golakam of the phone is damaged. The hardware is totally damaged. Can the software part work in a damaged phone? No, it cannot, right? Now, suppose the phone falls in water and then after some time, you pull it out. Now, physically, the phone appears fine, right? Inside, if you open it and see, everything is where it is supposed to be. Everything looks fine. But the software is damaged and it will not work, right? So for the body also, it is the same way. Sometimes the Golakam, if it is damaged, then also it results in that deficiency, like blindness or deafness or something. And suppose due to whatever the karma reasons, the Indriyam is not available or the Indriyam is damaged, so the Golakam may be there, but it will not be working because of the karmic design of that person's life. Okay, so if either one of them, for whatever reason, is not there, then it will result in a deficiency. So now do you understand the difference between Indriyam and Golakam?
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you so much. Just I was having one more curiosity while you were explaining. So is it like that? What would be the inner anatomy of these Indriya? I would say, is it through prana or is it through nerve system? I don't know. Is it the right time to ask this question?
You're asking how does it work?
Yeah. These Indriyas.
The subtle part, we don't know. We cannot see, right? We cannot have a medical science do examination on the subtle part because it is not available for our perception, right? But the mechanism in the physical part can be all the nerves, the blood vessels. That is just a mechanism for it to work. That cannot be equated to the Indriya system itself.
So maybe it would be through pranas, like in some Reiki healing techniques, people by hand gives a prana energy, and then in psychic
Possible.
anatomy.
So Hatha Yoga talks about nadis, the pranic channels and all of that, but we cannot really see them. And, and as Vedantins, we are not very interested also.
Medaji, what about the organ donation upon death from the Vedantic point of view?
It works, doesn't it? For a lot of people, it works. So there's no harm.
No, what I mean, the Sukshma Sharira will not be having that particular organ if you happen to donate that organ. Sthula Sharira, somebody donates the heart or the eyes. That means the Sukshma Sharira will be moving without eyes, probably.
No, usually donation is done at death, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So that person's Sthula Shariram Sukshma Shariram has already left. What is there is Sukshma Shariram.
No, but yet there seems to be some connection with, for example, you are offering food, you are offering water with the mantra, chadanam, some phosphorus and all. It's supposed to reach the Sthula Sharira. From the same logic, if you happen to donate the eyes, the Sukshma Sharira the eyes also may be affected reasonably, I think so.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Because Shankaracharya seems to have clarified that he is, according to Vedanta, from his interpretation, not to donate the organ.
Where does this come? And
Shankara Paramacharya, Shankar Kanchi.
Okay.
He has said somewhere, he has said, you can just check on that. I think
I don't know in what context he has said. If it is from a reliable source, then we may be able to take it. But anyway, this organ donation and transplants is a common practice that is happening now.
common practice, we take it for granted, but nobody looks at it from the Vedantic point of view. That's what I
see. The Vedantic point of view is finally what? It doesn't matter. That is the ultimate Vedantic point of view.
No, ultimately when you subscribe to the transmigration logic, then you do some rituals using the gross materials like water, food, and oxygen. You may even breathe into it. Nambudiri may even breathe into it, whatever he is doing. Tantra, mantra, yantra, everything. It's supposed to reach the other domain. From that point of view, if you do something of donating the organ, it is supposed to affect.
That other domain that you talk about, is that Satyam or Mithya?
Mithya. Everything is Mithya. Ultimately, doesn't matter.
That is the point.
Doesn't
matter what you do, whether it is papam, punyam. Finally,
nothing matters.
For Satyam, it is beyond papam, it is beyond punyam also.
Yeah.
It is beyond both. Okay. So from that point,
what he meant to say was, suppose you happen to donate one organ, the next birth you may, in all probability, you may not have the eyesight, vision. That's what probably it is.
Can I speak here?
So, yes.
No, but that is punyam.
Yeah.
Is it not?
No, the other thing is that the body, which is the Sthula Shariram, is ultimately cremated and it returns back to the 5 elements. So in any case, it is destroyed. So how does it matter if a person after death, when his Sukshma Shariram is already out, that means the power to see, to feel, all is gone with Sukshma Shariram, only the Sthula Shariram is remaining. So if a part of that is given to another person,
No, the question is there any connection between the Sthula domain and the Sukshma domain? Because you do certain rituals in the ritual way. You are offering food, you are offering water. The effect is supposed to reach the Sthula Sharira to empower it for the astral travel.
that's for Sukshma Shariram, isn't it?
Sukshma
Neeraj?
Sharira. So if you do something to the eye, it is supposed to affect the other area also. Could be.
When it comes to Sukshma Shariram, what you're asking can be addressed in two ways. One is the, the punyam papam of it.
Yeah, that is one side.
consequence of it.
Merit and meritorious action. Okay.
The consequence of it. And that is just stored and recorded.
No, but meritorious action is not done by the person who is dead. He is already dead.
Then it doesn't matter, no?
No, that by the
Only your actions, the law of karma says, only your actions affect your consequence.
Yeah, the
Your actions will
action
result
till
in
he
your
is dead.
consequence.
Action till he is dead. After he is dead, if he does, it doesn't matter. Doesn't go towards the merit.
Yes, it doesn't matter beyond, if that person is not doing the
exactly.
action, it doesn't matter. Secondly, every action is accompanied by intention, and that intention is what determines whether it is punya or papam, not the action itself. Okay, so if the intention is to help, it is definitely treated as punyam. And remember that every action will always have a consequence, whether negative, whether positive. Okay, and we cannot live life trying to totally avoid papam. We can try our best, but complete avoidance of papam is not possible.
Yeah, that is well taken. Yes.
Okay, it is not possible. It is not a feasible way of living. Okay, so the best we can do is make sure our intentions are okay. Finally, what is the purpose of doing all of these things? Are we doing all this? Or
Moksha. You want moksha. You don't want another birth.
Yeah, we don't want another birth. We don't want anything. So what do we want? We want jnanam so that we can have moksha. That is the ultimate purpose of doing all this. So the whole point is of getting punyam or doing good things is to acquire enough punyam to have a conducive life for jnanam. Okay, that
yet when I'm born, I want to be born with all the organs intact.
But it is still not impossible. And remember that despite whatever circumstance of life you may be in, there is something called agami karma, your free will, your willpower, your present action. The strongest weapon you have at any point of time.
If I get that article from Parmacharya, I'll forward to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Megha ji.
Yes.
Donating organ, it's like ये चीज तो मेरी है ही नहीं, so why I am keeping it? Like it's like you're giving your clothes. I am not doing anything great about it by donating my eyes or any organ. It was not mine. Temporary मैंने borrow किया था, मैंने आगे pass on कर दिया. I am to just a medium, like
that is all good. That is correct and fine. I accept that. But when you say it was never mine, who is me in that statement?
Nothing is mine. Nothing.
Who is me? It doesn't matter whether it's your.
I am nothing.
I am nothing. Is that a correct answer?
No,
yes,
it is
I'm
a
like
residence for my. It is a residence for my Sukshma Sharir.
Who is me in that?
Medhaji.
Yes. Who is
Medhaji, may I?
Yes.
Can we take it like this for organ donation? That the donee has Indriya intact, only Golakam was creating this deficiency or what. So by donating an organ, we are providing Golakam to in support of the Indriyam, so that pursuit for moksha can continue for that.
It is possible. See, we don't know how the law of karma works. The deeper, interconnections, cause and effect, that is beyond the scope of the human intellect. It is not for us to be analyzing. It is not possible, feasible, practical to to be doing that. The best we have are the guidelines given to us, which is what you do an action, there will be a consequence based on the intention of that action. And sometimes we have to enjoy the consequence, sometimes we suffer the consequence. But what is our goal? To go beyond action and consequence altogether. And that is not possible through action at all.
Almost finished.
Action cannot.
Also almost ready for the deep cleaning, but
1 minute.
Professor, I need you.
Action cannot result in moksha. Karma can never result in moksha. So finally, whatever is done in the karmic plane does not matter, because it will anyway not affect my status as Brahman. That is one point. Second, when you say it was never mine to give or to, I just had it temporarily. Who is the me in that? It is the jiva. Again, we are trying to go beyond jivahood, right? We are trying to claim Brahmanhood. And from that point of view, there is no me, mine, there is no other, because all that there is only Brahman. There is no other thing. There is no separate thing. There is no second thing. There is only one thing. That is Brahman, and that is me. Okay, so this has to be the understanding. So when this is a final and ultimate analysis. So everything else from the point of view of Vyavaharika, from the point of view of Anatma, all of this we study only to dismiss it in the end. So my strong recommendation is to not get too involved into Anatma debates. It doesn't take us anywhere. Okay, and this is in fact the same reason why we say that, you know, in Mahabharata, a lot of things happen and a lot of people get into debates. Why did he do that? Why did she say this? All these things. But finally, we say, it doesn't matter, no? It doesn't really take us anywhere. It doesn't really give us anything. The only thing for a mumukshu, for us as Vedantins, is the jnanam. And so you have to, whenever a question comes up, you have to ask yourself, is this question taking me towards jnanam, or is this just distracting me and taking me down a different road? So sorting out the relevant from the irrelevant, that is one of the very important qualities of a seeker. Okay, so SPG gives a very nice example of sugarcane. When you take the sugarcane, what do? You bite the sugarcane and you chew on it. The juice you swallow and that fiber you spit out. The relevant you keep, the irrelevant you dismiss. And that we always have to do. So do not get distracted by misplaced curiosity. Curiosity is good, but misplaced curiosity will be an obstacle. So this is important. So these questions are fine, but always remember that all of this study of Anatma, of Sukshma Sthula Sharira, is finally so that we can dismiss it. Remember the very first line of this chapter which we started? He said, Sthula Sukshma Karana Sharira Vyatiriktaha. This Atma is different from all of these things. It is beyond all of these things. It is none of these things. So remember always that that is what we are aspiring to.
Medaji, how will a person know if he or she has attained moksha?
You will not know. That is the answer.
Okay. And the other thing is, if a person kills another person, he has done papam. So while doing this papam, the other person's punya has increased, or it has no effect?
Your papam or punyam is only for you. It does not affect anybody else negatively or positively. Their own actions will result in their own papam or punyam. Your own actions will result in your papam or punyam.
Okay. Thank you.
You cannot change anybody else's papam punyam.
Metaji,
Yeah.
this Golakam and Indriya for the Jnanendriyas also apply for the Karmendriyas?
Sorry, can you repeat?
The explanation about the Golakam and the Indriya that we use for the Jnanendriyas also applies for the Karmendriyas?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Mataji, very sorry, I have one question.
Okay, last one because we are past the time.
Yeah, like ma'am, you were saying that Sukshma Sharir has a little longer life, okay? And so does it mean that if one is not leading towards moksha and he's accumulating more and more karma, then its Sukshma Sharir life will keep on increasing and increasing?
Actually, Amit ji, I cannot hear you. There's a lot of disturbance.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, this is better.
Sorry, ma'am. So what I was trying to ask, like we were talking that Sukshma Sharir has a little longer life. Okay. So does it mean that if one is not working towards attaining moksha and jnanam, and he is accumulating more and more karma, so does that mean his Sukshma Sharir life will keep on increasing for many and many a life? Is it like that?
Yeah, it will go on. Remember that the creation is cyclical. There is no starting point and there is no ending point. So if you ask the question, where did Sukshma Sharira start? There is no answer because it has been here always. It can have an ending point at moksha. Suppose that person tries and works for moksha and gets moksha, then that is the ending point of Sukshma Shariram. But if a person does not work, then again, it continues endlessly.
It's like a loop. Okay.
Yes, like a loop. It is a cyclical or circular process.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. We'll stop and we'll conclude with the prayers. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.
Om Tassat.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mataji.
Mataji.
Thank you.
Mataji.
Bye.